some things with you today. As Dr. Amira pointed out, we go back a long way in the 90s. And I've been doing this. So sometimes people ask me whether I'm actually a scientist, because I dabble a lot more in communication and communication training than science. Communication gives you a little bit more mileage in terms of visibility. People see you, people can know you better. So every time I give a talk, people ask me, are you really a scientist? So I tell them, yeah, you can check my background. I am actually a scientist on full time, and other times I'm traveling around the world, taking the debate team on tours and tournaments and running workshops. So the topic that I chose today is to share with you how we can better connect with our students using the online platform. Transition is the key, and how flexible we are in terms of adopting new technology. Or it's not really a new technology. Let's face it. We knew this was there. The technology was already there. ADEC and PTM and everyone has been telling us to start using online tools. E-learning week was forced upon us, and most times we just blinked and looked the other way. And then when COVID-19 hit us, suddenly we started regretting, maybe we should have done this a lot earlier. Maybe we should have taken e-learning seriously, and then we won't be in such difficult times. But it's not that difficult. Transition is not, it's just about you and your attitude. I come from a generation where I actually grew with technology, so to speak. So if you look at my background, when I did my undergraduate thesis, it was typewritten. My master's degree was on WordStar, and my PhD was on Microsoft. So I know the difficulties of moving from one to another. And I think even when it hit us at the beginning, a lot of us probably didn't think that this will last, or this is going to be the new norm, teaching online. So even at the beginning of the implementation, at the peak of COVID-19, people were just uploading slides and allowing students to download them without really making an effort to really communicate with students. So the question most people ask is, can it be done? So it can be done. It's being done, and after a while, you will realize that maybe this is a better way of teaching, because it gives us a lot more tools and variation to content delivery, and students are more appreciative of efforts that they actually can see. Because when we walk into lecture rooms, and we are so used to this setting, where we stand up and deliver. The students sit down and listen. Most students don't see the kind of work that goes in before we actually appear in classrooms. The research, the preparation, the planning. What they see is that 1 hour of lecture that we give. This time, when we actually put things online, students can, to a certain extent, see the effort and see the process, and they sometimes are a bit more appreciative. If you're a parent and you have kids going to school, you also would have learned with them during the last couple of months, sitting through with them classes, and you can, as an observer to that process, you probably would have picked up some of the cue that I'm actually going to share with you today, because it's easy, but it's not that easy if you are not into it. wholeheartedly, and that's the challenge. So we have to plan, um, and we have to do this one by one, just like anything else that we do. And see, I'm a person who enjoys walking into classroom. I like the attention on me. I like the process of engaging, seeing students, see how they react. I use very little PowerPoint slides in my face-to-face lecture. I do a lot more talking. So for me, this transition was a bit difficult. Suddenly, I'm not out there meeting them, talking to them, and that can be challenging. But you realize that tech is the new sexy now. People see the quality of your presentation online. They see what you put out there and the kind of effort, the kind of tools that you use to create those output. It's Students or this generation appreciates those kind of things a lot more than just looking at you, and that's a sad truth. One way to overcome this, and actually a good way to engage, is to ask your students what they like, what they prefer, and then they may be able to help you. So I do that. I talk to I don't directly ask my students that I teach in my class, but since I coach debating teams, I ask my debaters about what they like, what they know, what they can help me with, and that has helped me to some extent prepare and do a better delivery of my lectures. So, first things first, when we do online, or when we choose online platform, students will be accessing classes from the comfort of their homes most times. But we have to set the rules on the very first day. So the first lesson you have is laying down the rules, that what you expect in the next 14 weeks of the semester, what you expect the students to be doing during class times. So it's important because it's easy to get sidetracked and become very informal if you don't control or set the rules. So things like attire, yes, they're at home, but you should still insist on them appearing professional, because this is long term, as in you are molding them to be quality graduates who are at some point eventually are going to go out to the working world. So you need to instill some control on their appearance, so that they make an effort just like you do when you appear in online classes. I've heard students complain, not complain, but students like to talk among themselves, and my debaters are my feedback on what happens in their classes, and they share these things. Lectures not appearing the way they should. Similarly, we have to have an expectation, and that expectation must be translated to them, or you must tell them. Be respectful. It's important. So online decorum is slightly different on simple things like turning off the microphone when you are communicating. So that's the first rule. Everyone is quiet. And I prefer, when I have an online class, I want them to turn on the video, turn off the microphone, so I can see them. I still need to know that they are there. It's easy for people to disappear. Turn off the microphone, turn off the video. You're online, but you're not there. And that is not what we want. So we must make sure that people who we are communicating with are with us. They should be there and they should be visible. Also, try to make sure that things that you expect in the normal classroom is still maintained. Noise, avoid using emojis, abbreviation. I know that is the tech language, the simplistic way of communicating. But as academics, we want to make sure there are other platforms to allow informal communication. I'll talk about that a little later, but in the classroom setting, when you do online lectures, that's something that you want to do. If you are familiar with Zoom, like if you're using Zoom, they actually have a feature called attention tracking, where if you are the host, you can actually know if someone is still there or someone is not looking at the screen. That's a feature that Zoom has. A lot of people don't know about it. So if you want to do an online class and you want to make sure that students are, so now it's easy to look at the screen and look elsewhere, or look past it and do something else. Keep the phone next to you, next to the screen, and pretend that you're actually looking, but you're not. So it's important that I'm not suggesting that you should use Zoom and do this, but if you are worried that students are not actually paying attention, turn video on, use these things. The other thing that you want to do is have a proper roadmap and tell them what to expect in the 14 weeks and how course will be conducted. In the past, what we do is we know lectures face-to-face, practical, if there's a practical or tutorial, how many hours. Proforma, we'll upload a proforma of what we're going to do. That is it. And students know what to expect week by week by topics. The content, they come and get it from us during lecture. But in an online platform, you have to be a bit more detailed in how each week the content is going to be delivered. So the proforma is a guide for the course content, but the method of delivery or the mode of delivery has to be spelled out. So if it's going to be an assignment, Spectrum, you can use Spectrum to upload and set time. You can tell them lecture will be uploaded in Spectrum, but during face-to-face is a discussion. So there are variations for every week, and try not to make it boring in terms of every week is the same thing. Then once it becomes predictable, or students would find that not motivated enough or not interested enough to actually stay on with you during those 14 weeks. So you'd have to mix it up a little bit, but make sure students are aware of what to expect so that they can be prepared to access or learn at the time that you're actually going to be delivering them. The next thing is clarity. So when you give a lecture online, when you give a lecture face-to-face, you put up PowerPoint slides, and and the slide contains some information. A lot of times things are explained through during the lecture. So you're actually explaining to them processes or formulas or policies. But if you do it in an online platform, it's not, that's the complaint that we actually heard from some students, is that lecturers have just uploaded the lecture notes, but there are no explanation, because you cannot expect the receiver to be able to comprehend just by reading the slides, because So now you have to, if you have already prepared slides from your previous lectures that you did face-to-face, before uploading them, you may want to add notes at the bottom to explain each slide as if you were actually giving a lecture, or you accompany a recorded video explaining slide by slide, so that students are able to download and read the slide and listen to the lecture at the same time, so they can then better understand the content. So it's not good enough just to upload slides and then assume that students are able to follow. Of course, the debate then will be, do we actually have to spoon feed undergraduates? The wording is out there. Some people, if you don't give them enough information, then they will complain. If you give them too much, others will out there in the workforce will say your students can't think because you've been spoon feeding them all this while. So it's a balance. But if you look at your slides and you think that there should be some explanation that accompanies the picture, the diagram, the graph, then add a footnote to that slide so that students can enjoy the content to its fullest. The next point is you have to make sure that your communication is multi-channel. It's important that while we are doing this online, we have made sure that as many communication channels are open for students to contact us or to communicate with us. So even when I run my classes on Hangout or Google Meet, there's a chat on the Google Meet that you can use, but I also make sure that I have a WhatsApp group that is active, and I'm checking that as well. Students who are unable to communicate with me through the Hangout will communicate with me through the WhatsApp. I also tell them in class that if you have any question that you want to ask at any one point, write it down so that you don't forget at which point you wanted to ask the question, and then take a snapshot and send it to me, or email me, communicate with me. You really have to encourage students to talk to you more and tell you what they feel about each class, so that you are aware of the shortcomings. We know face-to-face lectures, when I run my classes face-to-face, at the end of the lecture, my last question is there any question? And for the longest time, there'll be no question. Students just don't like to ask you. But you will realize that when the class is leaving, one or two of them will stay back to ask you questions because they're afraid to ask you in the large setting. So that is something that you can anticipate, and you will see this happening, that in the online platform, students are asking more questions because they can directly communicate with you, and you should encourage that interaction. In fact, you should ask your students to write in the chat when you're giving an online lecture the questions, and at the end of the class you don't have to ask is there any question. You just go through the chat and answer questions that have been raised in the chat box. So it's not an interruption to your presentation, but it's more of them keeping track of at which point they had a problem with that they need further explanation. And I think that's a good method of communicating. And don't restrict, only communicate with me through email because it's a formal setting. Now, with online classes, you should be a bit more flexible in communicating with your students. This is moving on directly from the previous slide. you have to get personal with your students. Not, you know the boundaries, but you have to be a bit more than usual, because now you need to know what they are facing, the problems in utilizing the online platform. Um, Sometimes we are speaking from a position of privilege. We are in a city, we are in a city campus, we are reasonably well off to some extent that we can afford um, tools, good laptop, high speed. We can have access to fast internet service. There are students who have to leave home to get to a coffee shop or mall to access the Wi-Fi. Um, and I've spoken to my students. I've asked them, and then when I hear background noise, I ask them, "Why is your background?" There are a lot of people moving about, or sitting in a mall to access the free internet because they can't afford it. But you won't know this until you get to know them. And this is an effort, an extra effort now that is, I wouldn't say required of you, but something that you maybe want to do if you care about your students. They are not all of the same economic or social background, and where they are, what they have, and what they can access will vary. So you need to be able to get those information and then only put your class plan into action or modify delivery as and when you see fit. Um, I've had students who had siblings and only one laptop in the house, and that sibling also had to attend school. And so, who gets priority for school time? So sometimes we have to move our lectures around to suit when they are free, so that they don't get left behind. So this is an extra effort. It's a lot of effort to get to know your students, to know what problems they face, so that you can make sure that everyone is getting something out of your lecture and nobody is left behind. And that's an important point to note, that privileged students will benefit if you don't take into account the disparity in the socio-economic standings of everyone in your class. It's different when you do face-to-face. When they stay in hostel and they turn up for lecture, there is no extra effort required except their presence. And everybody gets equal access to the information that you're sharing. But when you do it online, you have to be aware of those shortcomings so that you can tailor your delivery according to the situation. And this is continuation of the previous point on being aware of. So when you do physical class face to face, you can see someone who's not focused. You can see someone who's dozing off. You can see when someone gives you an eye contact to show that they are confused or they don't understand. Online platforms, you can't observe this, and you really don't know whether your instructions have been clear enough. So this is the first aspect. The second aspect is the environment of your students. Sometimes students like to put a background, a clear background, or they will just turn off the video. And sometimes you'll see distraction. You'll see people walking behind. You'll see noise. You'll hear noise. You will encounter a lot of technical problems with the background noise. So you are, in a way, you have to be aware of these shortcomings, and you must be prepared to modify your presentation according to the situation or the environment. Okay, so sometimes it's good you just tell all your students to have a plain background so that it's not distracting. Because if students are not looking at, they're looking at the screen, but they're not looking at your slide or looking at you. They're looking at the nice, cute picture that's behind someone else's background. So these are all distractions, and you want to minimize distraction as much as possible. Some things are within your control, some things are not. I live in a house where the back of my house is a park, and sometimes if I have early morning class at 8, I hear the birds louder than anything else, and I have absolutely no control over what sounds the bird make and how noisy they are. So, and I can't mute mine because I'm the one giving the lecture. If I hear dog barking in the background somewhere, I'll tell my students, can you please turn off your mic because there's noise. But if you are the one delivering and you have this distraction, you have to be aware of it and try to make adjustments as much as you can. Okay, content delivery. This is an important aspect. As I said at the beginning, the key points are your module, which is also your pro forma, the roadmap, the instructions, clear. But you have to be able to tell the difference between accessing something online and the physical presence of someone giving you the information. So earlier on I said about socio-economic standing of students and fast, reliable internet access. Like today, I'm giving my talk from my house because I'm very confident with the quality of the internet service in my house. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about the quality of the internet service in when I run a bioinformatics course, and when there are more than 25 students accessing the same website at the same time, it just slows down the whole connection because server has always had problems. If I'm sitting in IPS where my lab is and give this lecture, the Wi-Fi doesn't work most times. So I'll be the one having technical problems. So students have that problem too. Colleges, I was a fellow in college for many years. Every year, the #1 complaint for students in hostels is poor Wi-Fi or no Wi-Fi connection. So they rely on data. So while we give one lecture a day at most, or an hour of lecture, and we can utilize data, students who attend 4 or 5 lectures a day or 3 lectures a day over a period of a week will run out of data pretty soon. And we cannot assume that data is cheap and they can afford it. Therefore, they'll be able to do it. So if your on face-to-face lecture is an hour or 50 minutes, your online delivery should ideally be about 20-25 minutes. You shouldn't run a full 50-minute PowerPoint lecture or video lecture, because the download ability or the transfer rate of the content on students, sometimes use only a smartphone and not a laptop, and so those are contentious issues that people have to be aware of and address it. Learn how to dance. You know why I put this up? Sometimes we upload videos of teaching, or we upload slides with recording, and we think that if students download and read them or watch that video, they will know it, but it's not that easy. I tried this, not proud to say this, but I tried learning some dance moves online It was a disaster. You know how many times you have to, if you're learning something new and you're not familiar with, try going on YouTube and looking at, forget about the 1 hour video instruction, a 5 minute video instruction of something. The number of times you have to pause, restart, just to learn the steps will give you an idea of how difficult it is for students to download, watch a 45-minute video presentation of a content and understand it at the first watch. It's not. It's an extremely difficult process to learn something online if the content is longer than 20 minutes. You can try this. Go to YouTube after this, learn, click on a lesson that you've never learned before or never been taught before, and try to learn something and see how long you can last on a video of technical nature. Maybe certain things are not too bad. Even if you learn how to cook, like, right? Following recipes, simple step by step. You still have to stop, look back, because it's not that easy. Although we think making a video 45 minutes means you've done your job. Okay, so this is something to think about, and you may want to be aware of this issue. Okay. One of the other complaints that we hear is because it's online, it can be anytime. But that anytime means you cannot change times of class or settings with very little notice, because students have to make adjustments. See, if they are there physically, either in hostel or nearby, they know class at 9, they're not, it doesn't require anything more than just being there. But if it's an online content where they need to access internet, number one, they need to have access to the tablet or the laptop, which probably could maybe share. See, when they are not at home and they are staying in hostel, that laptop is theirs and theirs only to use. When they're at home and they have siblings who, these things are shared, and so you have to be, be sensitive to that, the need of the student as well. So make sure that if you set a time in advance, turn up and don't be late. Don't extend classes just because you think it's online. They don't have to physically be elsewhere. Okay, because this is good for you as to be disciplined, and it's good for them so that they are also appreciative of the efforts you make to make sure that you communicate with them in the right way. And that's something that I would advise you if you are not doing it already. Sometimes it's easy, you think that your home, it's easy to move things around. It is, but that involves moving a lot of other people's schedule around as well. Okay, so just be a bit more sensitive to that. More than ever, you have to be more engaging. Because you're not in front of a lecture hall, lecture room, you don't have to shout anymore to get your attention. You don't have to use difficult language. You have to speak a lot slower, and you may have to repeat yourself many times because you'll get interruption. Seriously, I didn't hear that. When I sit through my son's classes sometimes with him, the class is hardly 15-20 minutes, because all the time you hear kids shouting in the background, teacher can't hear, teacher I can't see, teacher I can't hear. And that's interruption. It will continuously interrupt. So you have to be patient, and you have to be aware of the shortcomings, and then do it. You cannot be, I said already, how many times do you expect me to tell you this? You cannot get loud, because they will just put you on mute. Actually, they can't, but they just turn the volume down. So these are times where you have to be very engaging. The tone that you use now, the communicative, is no longer a lecture where you stand up and deliver. You are now talking to your students, and always give time for them to understand what you're saying in this platform. Okay, because sound, not easy to hear. If you're giving a sentence, they may miss a word, and that word could be crucial, and they may not be able to follow. So my suggestion is you do a lot of asynchronous teaching first by uploading slides or videos before your video classes. So they get to see the slide or read notes, watch a video. So you spend most of your video lectures just chatting, communicating, discussing. You don't have to put up slides anymore, like what I'm doing right now. So in my normal lectures, I don't do this anymore. I will actually upload the slides in advance, and I'll talk to them about the slides that I've uploaded, so that it becomes more communicative, more engaging, and show them that you are with them. This is the time where things change. You don't have to have that presence anymore, like I'm the lecturer, you're the student, I speak, you listen. No, I think it will change. Okay, students appreciate seeing your face. So you have to be present and answer questions on time. Just because it's there in your chat or in your email of a previous lecture that you just gave, you don't have to wait until a different time to answer. Answer, engage. As soon as something pops up, engage, answer. Show your appreciation, say thank you, be polite and kind. Okay, this is a difficult time for everyone, so you have to be a bit more reasonable in your expectation as well. So now, in the past, when we gave assignments, maybe we gave them shorter time. Now maybe a little longer. If you're doing assessments for an hour online, you may want to consider giving longer time. So this is the time where you are asking for feedback even before the course ends. So you want them to, week 3, week 4, ask them what is missing, what more you should do to make teaching better, and then make those improvements over the following weeks that come, so that you are sensitive, aware, and you engage. Okay. This is you, and this is for you, how you want to appear. You must show your enthusiasm. I know it's difficult when you're doing it online. I myself, I derive lots of happiness physically when I'm there. I know when I walk into class, I like the attention on me, so I dress up, I always try to look smart. And when I walk into classes, I know students are looking at me, and I'm happy because I'm a communicator. That's what I thrive on, the response that I get. You have to translate that into your online class as well. Dress up for your class. Make sure that you appear how you normally would appear outside. Take your time. You don't have to be just because it's home. You wear home clothes and appear terribly uninterested in what you're supposed to be doing. Again, this is this time more than ever. You are being watched. You are being judged, and to some extent, you are being recorded. And in this digital age, anything and everything can go viral. So be aware of. So students may not record your appearance on the record button, because if you are the one posting, you can control who gets to record, who don't get to record. But they can use the handphone in front of them and record, or in the background, and then they share. This is how my lecture looks like. This is how my lecturer said. And all these things could come back to haunt you. So before it does, you should be happy doing this, and show them that you are in it because you like it, and that would translate into them enjoying your lectures a bit more too. That's an important trade-off that you would expect in this scenario. Finally, this every time I give a lecture on anything, I will talk about style. I actually run courses on this, turning on style. Technology allows you a lot more option and opportunity to turn on the style in presentation. There are many platforms, there are many tools, there are many ways to deliver content, there are many ways to create your video. These are the modern generation who appreciate technological developments. They like new things. They like the new way to present something, not the conventional way of just looking at PowerPoint slides. So if you can't physically turn on the style because you're not there with your charm or your fancy dressings, and you can't show that, you can now modify the style with technology, and easy to access, learn more things, pick up new things to do, and we can do this if we put in some effort in looking at online videos and how to create new video styles with background, sound, so many things you can do. And if you put all this together, you will get a nice online lecture delivery. And I'll leave you with that to think about. So there are basically 10 things. It mostly means now, more than ever, you have to understand your students better, get to know them, know the shortcomings, be flexible, make modifications, adopt technology, and enjoy what you're doing. All right. I will stop here for now, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chandran, for that was actually really, really useful in my view, because you're actually talking about engaging with the students and taking into consideration all the other things that can actually impact on the engagement that we have with the students. So thanks so much. I mean, personally, I'm very, very grateful that you're able to share that today. So we'll open this up if anyone has any questions, since there are, I think, not that many of us here. So it'd be good if anyone who wants to ask anything can just unmute your mic, and you can just shout out and ask out your question.
Hi.
I see your boy in the background.
Sorry.
Hello.
Hello, Pravjini.
Yeah. Hi. I have a question that when I'm doing this online session with the students, with my students, and like you do, we do the recording, video recording. We upload it to the Spectrum, and we told them you should view them before you come, and we only have 1 hour session instead of 2 hours our normal lecture, and to discuss about it. But the problem is we find that not all of them actually go through the materials and they come without anything. And when you ask, is there any question, it'll just be me talking for all the time. If I don't talk, everyone will be quiet. So for me, I realized those online sessions has been kind of a waste of time, because they don't come prepared. They don't really ask questions, and even I ask them to open their mic and just talk. And there's only 12 of us. We're not that loud, but no one wants to open the mic and talk. So that type of engagement is really not there. So end up I have to try so hard to talk, to say something. So I try to make quiz or Kahoots to do engagement, but these are, I'm not sure what's the way to actually encourage them to engage better. I think the extra things like quizzes and all are extra. They get stressed out too because suddenly they had to do quiz. But I told them it wasn't summative. It was just as a way to get them to ask questions, think about questions, relevant things about the topics. What is your opinion on this?
All right. Thank you for the question. Something that we all face in our new normal. So what I do normally when I have this kind of problem is I will tell my students that, because I do this in debates, and I've now translated that activity as part of. So I notice when I run debate trainings, when the debater knows his turn is to speak, after he's done, he will switch off as well. They won't communicate or engage anymore because they think they have done with what they're supposed to be doing. So what I do in that instance, or even in classes, is I'll tell them to read something before my class. And I'll tell them that every time anyone is asked to speak and they speak, that is graded and counts as part of their grading. But I'm not telling in advance who gets to speak, who gets to explain about the previous lecture. So I'll just at that time, so I'll tell them read first. During the class, I'll randomly pick. So if only those who speak will be graded. So different times, different people, different marks, very small marks, but it counts. So these people need to be pushed. So you tell them, I'm not telling who, but I'm going to call a few people to explain certain parts of my lecture, or I'm going to ask someone to make a short presentation on certain parts of my lecture, and I will grade them. But they don't know who's going to get called, so everyone has to be prepared. So in small classes you can do that, just to switch things around, or break your assessment to really small parts. Every beginning of lecture will be an assessment of the previous upload. So they will have to read, to answer, and capture those. So I make most of my content assessment very, very small percentage, but it's done almost every week. So they have to be reading before they come anyways. You can try that and see if it works.
Yeah, thank you very much. But the problem with that is that we have already set our marks allocation in the pro forma, in the assignments that we are supposed to. So it means that we have to adjust our marking percentage again within the one that we already assigned.
Yeah, that's why I said at the beginning, I said, now we take into account the feedback or our own assessment of the online process and then make the adjustments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Jenny. Do we have any other questions? Just feel free to open your mic and ask. Prof. Purabi, do you have a question?
Sorry. No, thank you. Thank you for what I got information. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. I actually have one question. I wanted to know how you give the marks for those. You just mentioned just now, Dr. Chandran, that you actually ask students to do presentations or answer questions. So, how much marks do you allocate for that, and how do you assess if someone actually does a really good presentation or answers a question or asks a question really well versus someone who does do what you ask them to do but they didn't really do so well? Do you penalize them for that?
No, I don't do negative marking or penalizing. I only reward the extra effort. That's the same way we do for debates anyway. No negative marking. So they either remain where they are, or if they want more, they do more. So you just reward the ones that are volunteering for do extra work, so they get extra.
So extra would be like an extra 1 mark, an extra 5 marks.
I'm very flexible with my continuous assessment marking. So I give them many opportunities to right the wrongs that they've done. So they can just keep doing until they reach the maximum. I don't know whether it's legal or not, but I do it anyway.
Well, it's engaging, so I guess the outcome, you probably achieved that, so that's probably very useful.
Yeah, because I think for me the important thing is when you do continuous assessment, is it testing them on what they know or don't know, or testing them whether they eventually know it? Because sometimes it takes, so you may have an assessment on week 3 and they may do really badly, but they may actually know that answer in week 14. So if they're ready to try it again, I say, why not? I mean, it is continuous assessment in a way. It's just that not at that time point.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I think that's also an important thing that we need to keep in mind, that students' learning is actually iterative and cumulative. They get better over time. So if we assess them too early and we use that as a summative assessment, it can actually be detrimental to the student when at the end of the course, they may already be, really, really good in that. Yeah. Okay, so I'll stop and I'll just open up again if anybody else has anything. You always need to give a little bit of extra seconds, I think, for things to come out. Okay. So just before we go off, if there is nothing else, I just have one more question for Prof. Chandran. You travel around the world and you've actually brought debaters winning championships around the world. And so I'm guessing that you have a really good network with other lecturers who are teaching in other universities. Do you know what situation they're facing with their students and engagement?
It's the same. Everyone is at the same position now, that is trying to use a platform that has been there for a long time and finally trying to do it. And I think most of us, because I deal with people who are also doing communication, they finally realize that maybe it's not a bad idea, and it's going to be difficult to translate back to face when you're so comfortable in this setup. And once you're used to it, you realize this is actually a very good tool that will complement face-to-face teaching.
Yeah, I think it's also like people working from home and then suddenly now having to go into the office. So it's a bit of an adjustment. Well, I guess if we don't have any other questions, I'm just going to say thank you so much to Dr. Chandran. I should call you Prof. Chandran, actually.
No, not yet.
Soon, hopefully. So thank you so much for your sharing. I think it's been very, very useful sharing. Sometimes in all of the, technological e-learning, trying to figure out tools, we sometimes forget the human side of online teaching. So that's very, very important, because at the end of the day, we're actually teaching students and we want to connect and make sure that they actually do get the learning. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you as well to everybody for joining in and staying tuned. And we'll see you again, hopefully, for another webinar, which we'll post in the Teach Online group. So thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.